This conference will now be recorded.
And let me bring my servers back. So let me log into my AWS console. So I'm back to my Mumbai region. I am here at EC2. This is my instance. So this is my Docker machine. Let me bring it up. And we'll wait for this machine to come up. Once this machine is up, I will get an IP address, which I got here. Let me go and log in. Put it EC2 minus user at the rate this thing, the IP address, and appearance, change it to 16. Okay, and SSH auth browse, and I guess I'm using this key. Let me just check which key I was using. DevOps Mumbai. Yep, let's get started. First thing first, sudo hyphen and host name docker server sudo hyphen, and I can see I've logged in as a root user to Docker server. If I just want to check whether my Docker is running or not, service Docker status, I can see it is up and running. Let me clear everything. All the commands which I have run yesterday is present here. I just type history, and I can see all the commands which I ran yesterday is present here. So I go through this, I can see that I ran the containers, then I ran in a detached mode. I gave a unique name. I did port forwarding. Okay. Not only that, I started with volumes where I created a volume and I started sharing or storing the data inside those volumes. Okay. When I talk about volume, okay, there is one more component which is very similar to volume, which is called mount point. So why should I go for something which is very similar to volume? So when you go for Docker volume, or when I say Docker volume ls, so if you go for this Docker volume and if you go inside this Docker volume, Docker inspect and this, you can see whatever you do, this is the standard path, or this is the path where always the volume will get stored. So you don't have a liberty of changing this path. Okay. So in case tomorrow there is a failure and I want that this data should not stay here, it should stay at some other location, or due to security reasons, I want that the data should reside somewhere else, I don't have an option of doing it. Now, because I don't have an option of doing it, I have to leave this volume way of working and go to a different way, which is called as mount point. So if I come here and say docker mount minus minus help, so this is what I was checking yesterday also, commit. I don't see, wait a second, I'll go to internet and find it out. So I'll say docker mount. So I'll go to the official documentation of Docker and I'll go for bind mounts. Okay. So it says you can either use a volume which comes with -v flag, or you can use a mount flag. Okay. But when you say mount, you will have the option of storing wherever you want. Okay. So if you come with this and just copy paste this, Okay, this is the first one and this is the volume one. I'll show you both. Okay, now if you see carefully, okay, everything is same, at least till this point it is same. So you are saying docker run minus D for detach mode, minus IT for interactive terminal mode, and minus name as dev test. You can give any name of your choice. And then at the end, you have this Nginx latest image which you want to run. This is also same. So what is different here is in volume, I'm saying this particular thing, and in mount point or mount, I am saying this particular thing. So volume is very $pwd. So $pwd is nothing but it will tell you currently where you are. Pwd is root folder. Okay, so currently I'm in root folder. So it is telling me $pwd. So if you come here and say $pwd, you can simply say it's a root folder. So it says that my volume is here in root folder. I've created a folder called target. Okay, so let me just do that. mkdir, or let me see if some folder named as target is there. cd target. No, there's no folder named as target. So I will mkdir a folder named as target. So if I say cd target pwd, so this is what they are talking about, root target. So if I come here and say what is $pwd, so you can say $pwd is this guy. This thing is also there. Okay, so this guy is nothing but this path. So it's saying that you're going to create a volume, and this volume will get created in that full library, whatever you had seen some time back, and it will be stored in this app. But in case you want to change that, you don't want to put it on the default location, you will have to use mount type as bind, which we also say is bind mount. You will have to mention your source exclusively, and you also have to mention your target exclusively. So if I run this particular thing, Control C. So I'm saying docker run minus itd, docker run minus d minus it, name, mount, everything. Okay, and you can come here and say run this. So it says there's some error. Wait, let me copy this directly from here. There's some error here. Let me just look into that. Error response from invalid mount config type bind. Type is equal to bind. It's okay. Minus bound type bound. Okay, bind source path. So this is the path which you are telling. Okay, I got it. So actually I was inside this target folder and it was not able to find this path. This time if I come back here and run the same thing, it will run. So it has basically created a container with this ID. If you want, you can come here and say docker ps minus a. Okay, and this is the one which got created. So to avoid confusion, I'll delete this one. Docker rm minus f. So if I come here and say docker ps minus, sorry. So So if I come here and say docker ps -a, I have this particular instance or this particular Docker container running. And I can also go inside and see Docker inspect, or I can say Docker. So what I will do is I'll say Docker inspect, INSPE, Docker inspect, and this container ID. Okay. So if you keep going inside, you will get something like this. And here is where you will get your mount point. Just keep looking there. Okay. Somewhere here you will get the mount point. See here. We are using a mount point, so the volume is null. Okay. And you will see the mount point somewhere here. Config. So let me come from the top. So it is the entire detail for this Docker container, quite big. So when I say Docker inspect the container ID, so it says this is the actual ID. This is when it was created. Okay. Currently it is running. And this is where you started it. Okay. This is the image which you are using. This is basically the commit ID of the message. The name which you gave is dev test. And what else? Actually, I'm looking for that path, that mount path. I will find it somewhere here only. See here. So the mount path or the mount type is bind, and you're using source as this. So the data will get stored here. And inside the container, the target is here. So you have a path of your own choice. One second. Okay. The same thing will not happen if you are running a volume. If you run this thing, obviously. So I'll come here. I will run this, but I'll give a different name because this name is not valid. Okay. Wait a second. Control X. Okay. So I'll change this name. Dev test is already taken, or I can delete the container which I have, Docker ps-a. So this is the running container. I'll delete it first. Docker rm-f. Remove the container. And let's run this one. The Docker -v1. Run it. Here also the container got created. So if I say Docker ps-a, I can see this container. I can say Docker inspect and this ID. Again, this big definition is what I got. But this time, when you come here, okay, this is already taking that only. It is taking the bind mount only. Okay. Why? Because this is already existing. Wait a second. The name is something which is causing a problem. Let me just come back here. Let me clear all these things. Docker ps-a. Let me delete this container. Docker rm-f. Let's clear everything and let's create it like this, like how we created yesterday. Okay. So this is how we created yesterday, right? We told docker run -it, and then we told sample volume is what I'm going to use, and this is the path where I'm going to put it. Docker ps-a. This time if you go inside this, Docker inspect, see here the path. So sorry, not this path, my bad. See the source path. So this is my source path. So every time it will go and sit here only, because when you create a volume, this is the default path which you will have to use. There's no other way of doing anything apart from that. So there is a very common question which can be asked multiple times, and Docker volume versus Docker mount. So now you practically know what's the difference between both of them. They do the same thing, but in a little bit different way. Okay. Now, when you log into hub.docker.com, you will see that there are many images available. Okay. And these images are easily available. But when you run a prod kind of, or when you're running or working on a prod kind of environment, you will not be using them directly. Or even if you are using directly, you will be customizing it as per your requirement. Okay. To do that customization, I will be using something called Dockerfile. Okay. Now let me say, come here and say UBUNT. So if I come here, I get the official image of Ubuntu, which is this. I can very well go ahead and download this, pull this, and get started. But will I be using the base version of Ubuntu alone? No. On top of that, I will have to do some kind of work. I will have to do some kind of installation, some kind of other stuff is what I have to download or upload. So that other kind of stuff, either I can do using Docker commit, or I can create a Docker file and I can do it. So the best way or the better way is to use, let me just come here and create a Docker file. Wait, I'll tell you what is a Docker file. So first of all, let's clear all these things. Let's come here and say that I want to create a Docker file. So why I need a Docker file? The answer to this is I need a Docker file because I'm going to make some custom changes to my existing Docker image or existing Docker file what I have got. I want to make some custom changes to that. I want to make changes as per my requirement, as per my project's requirement. So I can come here and say nano, and I will say ds caps Docker file. There's no extension, nothing, Docker file. Come here, and there are some keywords which you will be using here. Okay, first of the keyword which you'll be using, I'll just copy paste and then I'll explain. The first of the thing which you will be generally using is from. Okay, so from, and then the base image. Okay, so we say this is base image. On top of this, you are going to install something. So whenever you're creating a Docker container, this part is mandatory. You will have to give from base image, and this, it can be anything. It can be anything, whatever you are taking from hub.docker.com or from ECR or anywhere, you have to mention this is the base image, mandatory. It can be Ubuntu, Debian, Nginx, anything. Then comes maintainer, not mandatory, but it is kind of comment. Okay, where you say who is going to be the maintainer. Okay, so for me, I'm saying this guy is going to be my maintainer. Okay, then on top of my image which I have downloaded, I will try to execute few commands. So to execute those commands, I will be using something called run. Okay, run, and I want to update this. In Ubuntu, you have a command apt get. Like in Amazon Linux, we were saying yum yum install Docker, yum install git. In Ubuntu, you have this apt get. So you are saying run this command apt get for me. So run is a keyword which will tell that this particular command has to be executed. Then it is asking me to execute Vim. Vim is a VI editor. So I'm trying to install that also. And then once this work is done, I would like to print this message. So okay, so I'll be trying to print this message. Okay, so you can anytime go to Google and say I want a sample Docker file. So come here, . No, see here. This is a sample Docker file, exactly similar to what I'm using. The first word will always be a from. Okay, wait a second. Where did it go? Wait a second. So the first keyword will always be from, and whatever base image you want. Then a set of commands which you want to run. If you want to create a directory within the container, inside the container, you say work directory, and copy means copy the content from your Docker to inside the container. Then again, they are running some command, and then CMD. So CMD will create an entry point for you. Now you'll say, what is an entry point? So let me explain you that. So I'll just save this, Control X, Y, enter. Now, coming back to my example, which I was giving yesterday. Where is my drawing tool? Yep. So I told this is my AWS account. Inside this is my EC2 instance. Inside this EC2 instance, I have created a Docker container, and I'm trying to run something inside the Docker container. Some commands I want to execute inside the Docker container. So this CMD will create an entry point for me so that my commands can go inside and get executed inside. Okay, so if you carefully see this part, it says run. Where do you want to run? Inside the Docker container. Work directory, where you want to create that directory? Inside the container. Copy dot comma dot means I want to copy the files inside. Yarn, run this thing. This is running inside the container. So, and the CMD is creating that entry point from where I can enter. Fine. Once you have the Docker file, you can just view the file. It will look like this Docker file. Now, before running anything, I would just like to see if some images are running. I can see 2 images are there. I'll just delete them. Docker RMI, and I want to image to be removed. Okay, error. So one error response I got because there is a conflict, means there is a container running. So first remove the container. Docker -a. Take this out. Docker rm-f. Okay, and then remove this image, which is this one. Docker RMI, the image. Now if I come back here, Docker images, nothing. Docker ps-a, nothing is there. Okay, so Docker images, nothing. ps-a, nothing is there. Now I have one thing, which is my Docker file, and here I have my custom image. I took a base version of Ubuntu. I gave a comment as maintainer. I gave my name, and inside the container, I'm trying to run these commands. Okay, so this will build an image for me. I want an image from this. What should I do? I should say something like this: Docker build. Okay, Docker build means build an image out of this file, which is their Docker file, and you can give a name. You can give a name like this -t. Okay, so generally when we create a custom image, okay, we give a tag name or a special name to this. So generally we put it like this. So why am I putting like this? Because this is the name of my account, because at the end of the day I'm going to push it here. See here, this is my account name. So whenever you tag it, okay, you should be tagging it like this. You say Docker build -t. So -t is nothing but you're giving a name to this. Okay, let me say custom Ubuntu, and you can say 1.0. Okay, and you can give your Docker file here, right? If you want to create an image out of this, you should run this particular command. I can do a small change here. This Docker file is here only, right? So something which is present on the same directory, on the same location, I can give something called dot. So it is saying wherever I am running Docker build command, there only you will find your Docker file. So you don't have to write the entire Docker file thing. You can simply say dot. Dot means execute this here only. Enter. Now what it will say is there are some 5 steps. It will slowly run all 5 of them. You can see step 1, step 2, step 3, then step 4 and step 5. Let it execute. We'll come back and we will see everything from the top. Okay, something failed here. Okay, no worries, we'll come to this. So I had written a Docker file, which was this particular guy. And if you see here, 5 steps were there. So when I started, I wanted to run this. So to run this, I had a command in my mind, which was Docker build, and could have directly given the name. But if I directly give the name, the problem is that it is like orphan. It doesn't have a name. So I would like to give a name or a tag, and this is my version ID. So tag name generally starts with your Docker ID name, whatever you have, backslash the stuff, and then this thing. So it started reading. So it says sending the build context to Docker daemon. So whatever set of commands you have written here, I'm sending it to my Docker daemon, and let Docker daemon take a call on this. Let Docker daemon run these commands for me. So the first command is from Ubuntu. So it is saying, okay, fine, I'll pull the base image of Ubuntu from my hub.docker.com. And the first one was downloaded, and you got a SHA ID, or this is also known as a commit ID. So I got this particular thing done. The second thing is you ran or you gave a commit maintainer Vikas. So this maintainer Vikas thing got removing the intermediate container. So this thing was added, and then a SHA ID was generated. Then you gave a command run update apt update. So the updates were run on top of that. Okay, all the updates were ran. Then when it came to this guy, run apt get install something vim -y, it failed. Was not able to, unable to redirect this -y. Okay, so it failed. So basically what has happened here is out of 5 steps, 3 got executed. So internally, if I was able to visualize it, I would have seen that this is a base image. On top of that, my layer of maintainer got created. Then one more layer of run command got created, and this layer was there. Now when I run it again, this layer is already there. Second one is also there. Third one is also there. So first what I will do, I will make the changes, whatever it is saying complaining, I'll make the changes. So generally I think it's a typo, not apt get. Let me check. I'll put it like this. Okay, so generally when you copy paste from PowerPoint, this goes wrong. So I'm trying to install a software called Vim. Now what is Vim? I'll also tell you that.
The correct command already given in last command output.
No.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Let me check. No, this is a.
No. When you run this last command, so just check the logs, scroll up. So it clearly mentioned like this is the command. Scroll up.
See here.
Yeah, this one. The command bin shc get install return a non-zero code.
So it has failed.
Okay.
Status code should be 0. This has failed. That's what I'm saying. And it's clearly calling it out. See here. It is clearly calling it out. Okay. Clear all this thing. Sorry. Okay. What I'm doing here is I just changed my Docker file. The hyphen, I just changed with proper hyphen, and let me run it again. So the same command, Docker build -t, I gave a tag name and version and the Docker file location, which is this. enter. Now this time, if you see carefully, let it run. Some error I saw in between. Okay, but at the end I see a successful notification. Let me go in the top. Let me come from the top. Now, this time when you ran this command, okay, this image was already there. So it says this is the commit ID which I used last time. So let me use that only. Using cache means it came to know that this stuff was already done. So it did not rerun the stuff. Similarly, when you say apt get update, again it says using cache means I had this already done. So I'm not wasting my time by running it again. Then it comes to this location, run apt get install Vim. So it looks for that software called Vim or VI editor, and then it goes ahead and downloads that content from internet and tries to install it. While installing somewhere, it says delaying package, some apt util package is not installed. So some error it gave, but not a showstopper for me. It selected everything, unpacking, selecting. So basically it is installing that particular software for me. Once this software is installed, let's keep coming down. It's a big thing, looks like. It says once this is done, it gave me a commit ID, one more layer on top of what I have. And at the last, it ran this command, cmd bin echo I am from Ubuntu container, and then running this, removing the file. And finally, I get a final container ID and I get a image with this tag. So what I will do now is I will just come here and say Docker images. So if you see Docker images, you have this image, which is a custom image. It is your image with a unique image ID. It was created some minutes back, and the size is also more, 173 MB. So basically what has happened here is it took the Ubuntu base image. Okay. So this was your Ubuntu base image, which it took from hub.docker.com. On top of that, it added a layer of maintainer. Then you ran one command, you ran another command, and then finally the cmd thing. So this is your final image. Initially, when you started, this was there, the base image. So many a times, in fact, most of the times, you will be required to write this kind of files where you will tell what you need. Okay, whatever you need will be executed for you inside the container. Whatever I did happened inside the container. I'll show. Now I installed that VI Vim editor, right? So if I come here and say VI, okay, it is already installed here. Okay, so actually this VI editor, so VI editor is just like your nano editor. So you say VI sample.txt. So it is an editor, but a little tricky, because if you want to write anything, you say escape I. So you come in insert mode, write whatever you want to write. This is a sample file, and then you say escape colon WQ exclamation mark. So it is write, quit, and exit. Now if you come here and say cat, you can see your file. So VI is an editor basically, but this was already present, I guess. The thing which I want to show you here is Docker -a. I got a container here, Nervous Williamson. Okay, and this is no, this is a different container, I guess. I did not run this. Wait a second. Let me just remove this. No, it is some 8 minutes back. Did I run it? No, I don't guess I have run it. No, it is running some long back. So this thing came 4 minutes back only. It is running from 8 minutes back. So I did not create it. How it got created? Docker ps. Sorry, Docker. So if I come here and say Docker rm, sorry, Docker ps -a, I don't have anything. Docker images. I can see two containers are there. One is the custom Ubuntu container, which I created with version as 1.0, and the other one with Ubuntu as the base version. I can definitely delete the base version. Now here, one more concept comes into picture, which is dangling images. Now, what is a dangling image? To understand this, let me say Docker images. So if I see here, this particular image ID is named as 1.0. And to be very precise, it is named as Vikas 24775 custom Ubuntu 1.0. But if I make some changes to my existing Docker file, let me come here and make changes to my existing Docker file. So if I make changes to this guy, let me say I'm changing the maintainer name. Let me say I made a very small change. Control X, Y, enter. Okay. This time I'll run the command again. Which command? This command. Docker build -t. Now the image which is going to come, that will be renamed as 1.0. Let me run it. Okay, let it run. There are some changes. I made a many minor change, but there are some changes. And I got a new image, and this is the image ID I got. So if I come here and say Docker images, I can see here that this guy is the new image which got created with the tag name as 1.0. But what happened to this guy? This was my previous 1.0. If you come here, it's wait a minute. So previous this thing 69DE was my 1.0 earlier. But now I have taken that name from him and given to this guy. So this kind of image which has no ownership is basically known as dangling images, or it's a image with no name, nobody owning it. Okay, so many a times what happens is that if you keep running the same command again and again, a lot of such images will get generated and will be sitting in your system, and obviously it will make your system slow and ineffective. So you have to take care that whenever you are running such things, rename it properly. So let me say you made some changes, make it 1.1. Okay, so now if you come here, so you have 1.0 and you have 1.1. So this will help you to keep a track of what is happening, what is not happening, and all those things. Okay, so definitely I don't need this. I can take docker rm -f and let's remove it. Sorry, it was not rm -f, it should be rmi. This is gone. I would like to remove this also. It says that there's a conflict. Okay, and see, you can forcefully delete it. It's saying unable to delete, cannot be forced. The image has dependent child images. Okay, fine. So these child images are dependent, so it is not able to delete it. Docker ps -a, any container running? No container running. No. At this point of time, if I see, I have two images, 1.0 and 1.1. I would like to make it permanent because whatever I have done here, it may crash. The entire system may crash. It may go completely gone. What I will do is I'll try to make it permanent. So you have to store it at a repository. So all these days I was doing a Docker pull. Now I do a Docker push. So to a Docker push, you have to first do Docker login. So when you do a Docker login, it will ask you for your username and then your password. And if you provide your username and password correctly, it will say login succeeded. And now you can come here and say docker push, okay, your image ID full followed by the tag name. So if you want to make your image permanent, you can now push it to hub.docker.com. So now it is pushing layer by layer. So I can see some 3 layers are there which are getting pushed, and I can, it is retrying, so it's not able to push it. Some issue. I think now it is able to push. Pushed, pushed, pushed. Let's wait. Some more thing is pending, I guess. Okay. Now it is able to push, and it says I pushed the image, and this is the SHA ID or the commit ID. If you come back here to your hub.docker.com, go to your repository and just refresh your repository. So here you'll find the repository. Just come here and refresh it. You can see here a few seconds back, custom Ubuntu image was sent and the tag was 1.0. You can make it public or private. It will totally depend on you. So as of now, it's a public, and anybody who wants can do a Docker pull, and with the tag name, he can take this image and do whatever he wants to. So this is how you connect your Docker work to Docker registry or Docker daemon to Docker registry. Okay. Once this is available, you can anytime come back and say this command. So rather than saying docker push, this time you'll say docker pull and this tag name, which is 1.1. Running this command will not make much sense to me because I already have this image available with me, but let me still try. Okay, so it is saying image is already up to date and you have this image. Once you have this image, definitely you would like to run a container out of this. So you can say docker run -it -d, and let me say I want to run this image. If you don't give anything, it will look for the latest one, and you don't have the latest one, so that it will fail. Okay, and you can give a name. Custom container. Okay, let's run it. I can see a commit ID getting generated, and if I come back here and say docker ps-a, I can see a Ubuntu container ID with my Ubuntu custom has been created. Okay, so this is how you create a custom image and you go ahead and make changes. So the beauty of this is that you can very well at any point of time go make any changes, any work, whatever you have done. Okay, this similar thing can, so let me just clean everything first. Docker ps-a. So let me just docker this is rm-f docker ps, sorry, docker images. So these two are pointing to the same image, okay, because there is no change. And say docker rmi. Hey, wait a second. Why is it must be forced? I can see this base image is there. Docker think this will get deleted now. Now, what is Docker commit? Okay, so Docker commit exactly does the same thing what I have done right now. So when I'm to use Docker commit, I will have, sorry, clear all this. So I will have a running container, and I'm going to do a lot with that running container. So let me first come here and say Docker. Wait, let me go to Ubuntu image only, not a custom one. Explore. And simply says that if you want to use this image, anyhow. So if you want to pull this image, you say Docker pull ubuntu. So if you just say Ubuntu, it will pull the latest image out of that. Okay. So I have the latest image. Now if you come here and say Docker ps-a, I don't have any container, but I can run a container. Docker run -it -d -name ubuntu Docker run it and then I will look for this image, which is this one. So Ubuntu container, I'll say, so that, and this is the image we are running. Okay. So if I come here, Docker ps-a, I can see one container is running. I will like to go inside the container and do some changes, like Docker exec -it and this container ID, and then bin bash. Sorry, bin bash. So I'm going inside the container. Root @ the container ID means I'm inside the container. If I say vi, it says vi not found, means the Vim editor is not found. So I can go here and say apt get install vim -y, the same command which I ran in my Docker file. I can go here and say apt get update up update. It is updating everything. Let the update happen. I have done some changes here. Okay, but whatever changes I have done is not permanent. I want to make it permanent. So to make that permanent, I have to come out and I have to come here and say Docker commit and the container ID, which is this one. Now, if you do like this, Docker commit the container ID, come outside Docker images, you will see a new container has been created. Okay. Your machine is a Ubuntu. You run other Ubuntu container in which, wait a second, I'll come to this question, whatever the question was. So what I have done is the Ubuntu latest, which I took from hub.docker.com, is this one. On top of that, I made some changes and I did a Docker commit. So because I did a Docker commit, okay, on the older one, I got a new image with this thing. Okay. Now I can tag this. So I can say Docker tag. Okay. And you can say Vikas 24775 : new image and Docker tag, or you can just give the image ID. So -t you should have given. Wait a second, it's not allowing me to do a tag. Docker tag. Wait a second, let me check why it is not allowing me to do a Docker tag. Rename a Docker image. I don't want Docker rename. I want a tag. Okay, I understood what had happened. So I should have given something like this. Tag, give a tag number. No such image. Wait a second, what's the problem? Source image, target image. No, that's correct. Let's do it again. Docker tag. This is the commit ID of this, and I want to name it like this. Now it worked. This is the command. Docker tag. This image ID, I want to mention it like this. Come here and say Docker images. So now you can see that this machine has been given a name. Earlier it was not having a name. Now I have tagged it so it has a name. Okay. Now this machine has all the new features or the latest features which I have. Okay. So this is also exactly similar or very similar to the Docker file which we create. So in Docker file, there is a file and it can be reused. But in Docker commit, it is like ad hoc on the fly. You want to make some changes. And earlier, if your container was running with this image, now you can go ahead and delete that container and bring this new container with the new image. You can see a question here in the chat window. Your machine is Ubuntu and you run another Ubuntu in a container. Which is that machine? Okay, so the thing is, containers give you an isolated environment. I told you in the very beginning class. So even if this machine, the current machine is not Ubuntu, but let me assume this is Ubuntu. I can put a container here and inside I can run one container Ubuntu, another Ubuntu. Now when I run like this, Ubuntu plus Ubuntu, it will not bother. Why? Because this is an isolated environment. This is completely running differently, means at a different isolated virtualized environment. Okay, so that's the beauty of containers. So you can run n number of containers without affecting each other. So if you remember the first class where I told you have a roommate who is not bothering you, he is in isolation, staying separate, using the common resources but not bothering you. Okay, so this is what containers can do for you. So what we have covered till now, what is Docker architecture, how Docker files can be customized, what are the common commands like Docker commit, Docker build, Docker push, pull. Okay, we'll take it a step ahead, and in the coming class we will learn about Docker volumes. Once we talk about Docker volumes, I will tell you, Docker volume is done, Docker network. So once we go to Docker network, I will tell you what are the challenges when we face. So just to give you a brief of this, let me say this is one container, this is one container, and this is another container. So if they want to talk to each other, okay, they have to be in a common network, else they cannot talk. So if you simply come here now and say Docker network ls, you can see there's a bridge network. And if you go inside any container which is running, the default is bridge only. So via bridge network, they can easily communicate. But Docker gives you more functionalities where you can have different networks and you can connect all the containers which you have and communicate between those. Once that's done, we will be talking about Docker Compose, which will easily handle the Docker network issues. And then we will go ahead with Docker Swarm. So this will be covered tomorrow and day after tomorrow. So Docker Swarm, day after tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be talking about Docker Compose and Docker Network. Can we consider each, a question is there, can we consider each container as minimum one OS? Don't consider it as an OS, because if you start considering it as an OS, it is more of like a VM only. Because if you remember this diagram which I showed you in the beginning, VM versus Docker. So VMs have their own operating system. Where did that image go? See here. So when you say OS, our containers don't have OS. Rather, our VMs will have their OS. So it will not be a good option to say that each container has each OS. You can just say each container is a separate, virtualized, isolated environment. That's it. Okay. Now, a very friendly advice: once you're done with your work, please go ahead and stop your instances. Because if you don't stop your instances, you will see surprises at the end, unnecessary cost. Obviously, when you stop your server, this gets terminated. You can close this. Okay. See you guys tomorrow. Any doubts, any questions, you can ask at any point of time. Okay. Now, considering that there are no questions, I don't see any. We'll stop for today. We meet tomorrow again, same time, and we'll continue from here. Please do practice, guys. Thank you.